Hello, everyone. This is Ray Savage with Cambium Networks. Thank you for joining us for this very special edition of Cambium College. So far in our classes, we've talked about the foundation of a radio and the technology there. We've talked about applications, and this is a very special evening where Ben Royer, who's the operations manager for Royell Communications in Illinois, has joined us to share his experiences and be able to answer your questions live. The presentation is being recorded, and it will be on the Cambium community later on tomorrow. And if you do have any questions during the course of the presentation, please use the question and answer dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. Well, with no further ado, Ben, welcome.
All right, thanks, Ray. As Ray stated, my name is Ben Royer, operations manager here at Royell Communications, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then a little bit about our network, and then you know, any questions that you might have along the way we'll discuss. So a little bit about who I am. So Ray, as we click through these, I've got them kind of as little little bouncing effects, so go ahead and just populate this one. So my career in this field, in this industry, started when I was 12 years old. That puts it at about 21 years of experience in the industry. So I started really young, and I think, you know, as we get through the slides here, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I've got a little bit of experience in the field, and especially with Cambium equipment. If you want to go ahead and click again there, Ray. Just fun fact, I have 4 kids, and my best buddy is my dog Zeus, who's my big Great Dane. He's sitting here with me while I do this presentation as well. Comes to work with me every day. So it is a family business. That's one thing that I enjoy about it. But in the next slide here, so how I got to where I am. So as I said, I started when I was pretty young. I built computers, helped my dad, who had a computer company. And then in 1999, we decided to get into some internet. Local business that was offering dial-up was charging a lot of money for very poor service, and we thought we could probably do it better. So we partnered up with a business partner, and we started our dial-up internet service back in '99. Very quickly, we migrated to wireless internet in 2001. We started out with Cisco internet equipment 2.4. But then within just a few years of using that, we found out about Cambium at the time, Motorola, 900 megahertz and 2.4 FSK, and started deploying it, and it really launched our company into what we are today. But over the years, so I've kind of progressed my way through the company to where now I'm in charge of the overall operations of the company. So I do a little bit of everything, from infrastructure to managing our employees, technicians, and human resources stuff. And like I said, basically just a little bit of everything. So I kind of have my hands in every little aspect of our company.
Ben, I love the video you're showing in there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this video was a video that one of my employees took of me climbing up a tower. And basically what happened was that particular tower, we had a tornado go through the area, and it bent that tower in half. And in less than 24 hours, we took the tower down, repaired the damaged section, and reinstalled it by the end of the day. So less than 24 hours, we had a tornado damaged tower back in the air, and that was me climbing up there and unhooking the crane once we were fully back up and ready to go.
Oh boy.
So,
thank you.
Yeah. So so a little bit about what I do. Like I said, I do everything for our company. I climb towers. I give presentations like this one, negotiate any of our contracts, managing employees. You name it, I've kind of had my hand in it. So I will do my best to answer any questions of any aspect of our company as we go through the slides. So I think there's an animation here, Ray, and then we're on to the next one. Yeah. So a little bit about us. So our network, we have 80 tower sites. We're covering roughly 7 counties in central Illinois. We are definitely a Cambium house. So we have been with Cambium since the PMP 100 series. We have 320 in our network now, 450, EP&P, pretty much every backhaul platform, CN Pilot, and we have been messing with CN Maestro quite a bit. And we have 2 Medusa sites deployed, but we also have, I believe, roughly 6 other sites. So, you know, at least I would say somewhere in the range of 20 more APs sitting in our shop right now, ready to go up. We're servicing 5,000 plus customers. That number grows pretty steadily. And so we can talk a little bit about that as well. And then what's the next little bullet point there? Yeah, so we just recently started deploying some small scale fiber projects. So we're just getting our toes in the water on that particular item. That's actually what I've been doing for about 8 hours today, is working on one of those projects. So a little bit of everything, primarily Cambium house.
And we did have one question come in. Is this what you always wanted to be when you were in high school?
Yes. So I have 3 other siblings, and none of them really had an interest in technology the way that I did. And so my dad kind of at the time noticed that and put me to work. And when he first started teaching me how to build computers, I always kind of want to know how things work. And I think that's really drove me to what I do today. Is I'm very technical and analytical. And so when I saw the computer, I knew what it did, but I didn't know how it did it. And so I always wanted to learn that. And so that's how I got my start, was learning how different components went into the system to make it run. And so I had a natural kind of attraction to it from a very young age.
Okay. Another question is, did you grow up in this area?
Yes. So I'm from Central Illinois. I grew up in our hometown, which we're based out of Verdon, Illinois, which if you look at the picture on the screen, there's you can see Springfield, Illinois, capital of Illinois. It's the big city, kind of where all the roads are running out from it. We have some towers there, but as you follow the dots south, right at the border of that rectangular county and the one that Springfield's in, there's a whole bunch of little dots. That's our home base. So you can't really tell in the picture, but a good chunk of our towers is right in that one little area. Verdon alone, I think we have 7 towers in just our town with different technologies. So yeah, I've been in the area that you see on screen. That's where I've been living and growing up my whole life.
So when people say, you know the territory, you know the territory.
Yeah, that's actually something one of my employees this summer was like, he said something along the lines of, you know, one thing I like about riding with you is all these back roads that nobody would ever know to get to places quicker, is somehow you managed to know them. So
great. Let's see. We do have some questions coming in online. Some more of them. Let me expand the box here a little bit and take a look at them. Okay. Kurt is asking, I'm curious to know what speed profile packages you're offering the customers in today's bandwidth hungry networks.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, Kurt is asking, he's curious to know what speed profile packages you're offering, because today customers are pretty hungry for bandwidth.
Yeah, so really it's technology driven. So our primary speed plans are 1 meg, 3 meg, 6 meg. Now that we've started to get into some of the 450 and you know, EP&P even, and Medusa's coming in that, we're offering 10 and 15 meg now. That's for residential users. We do offer higher speed plans for you know, businesses, and usually we achieve that with point-to-point links, whether it be an EP&P point-to-point, or you know, if we have to go all the way up to a license link, then we'll do that as well. So it just depends on what the demand is. But in our somewhat rural area, as you can tell, there's not a whole lot of large cities on that map. But most of the time, our rural area, our average speed plan is 6 meg, and 10 meg has really started to take off quite a bit now that we're able to deploy it in a lot of certain markets.
Okay, and Rich here is asking, how tall are your towers? And I know you have a bunch of towers, so how tall is your tallest one?
Yeah, so 80 tower sites. Our tallest one, so it's kind of a mixed question. So there are tall towers that we own and or lease, 400 foot or higher. However, our equipment itself typically is no higher than about 250 to 280 feet. So even on a 400 foot tower, we typically go about 270. Just because you get much higher than that, then you have to start worrying about Cat 5, loss, and you also, if you do, path profiles, link planner, and things like that, there's not a lot of gain. We're in a very flat area, so usually higher is better. But once you're up around 270 feet, that's pretty up there. So that's our average, though, I would say is probably around 200 feet. That's probably our average tower heights throughout our network.
Okay, and I imagine if you think about that terrain, that has got to be flat territory, right?
Yes, yeah, it's very, very flat territory. So you can see on the map, there's a few little, sprigs of valleys and lakes and things like that, but elevation change, is less than a few hundred feet in most of our area. From a very low valley to a highest point. There's really no mountains in Illinois, so very, very flat surface area.
Great, thanks. Let's move on here.
Sure. So a little bit more on our network. What we're currently doing is we're focusing most of our efforts on CN Medusa and P2P 820S sites. So most of this next purchasing year, so the next 12 months, we'll be really focusing on getting all those Medusa APs I talked about installed and upgrading clients as needed. But then, our network, we've built it out. We focused the past couple years on multipoint. And now that we've started to establish large customer bases in certain towns, our backhaul path upgrades have been expedited. So we typically would start in a small town of, say, less than 1,000 people. We would start with EPMP, and if that gets loaded fairly quickly, we can very quickly move to 450. But even EPMP, its capacity is there, and so if we do an EPMP backhaul, we can outgrow that fairly quickly with 10 and 15 meg packages. So we're seeing that this year we're focusing a lot of our energy on upgrading our backhaul paths to the 820. Our staff and our fleet, so we're constantly growing. We currently have 21 employees, most of which are technical support staff. So I run 6 installers. They do every day of the week, 5 days a week. They average about 2 installs a day and about 1 fix a day. That can change, it can go down or it can go up. But roughly, we're doing about 300 jobs a month, so we're very busy, and that doesn't include infrastructure. So infrastructure, I have at least 3 guys. Today I had 5, just depending on the job. And what infrastructure is doing is primarily, we're out doing all these upgrade paths, so fixing backhauls or upgrading backhauls, installing new APs, things like that. We manage all of our network with an in-house CRM that we wrote. So it's a custom software that's all built in-house, PHP coded. And Maestro has been definitely growing in its capabilities, and we're using it a lot more now that it's starting to really establish itself. So between our in-house CRM and Maestro, we're able to manage most of our network pretty seamlessly.
Okay, and just for the sake of our audience, can you just explain what a CRM system is and how you use it in business?
Yeah, so a CRM, so our customer manager, basically what it does is it's kind of a one-stop shop for managing your customers. It's a database-driven software, and so when our employees log into it, they immediately have access to our ticketing system. So it'll tell you, who needs a call back, who's having problems, what issues need to be addressed most immediately. And then we have a whole a slew of ticket categories. So whether it's an administrative callback or a tower issue or sales call or whatever it might be, we have different categories that we assign these tickets to. But then it goes deeper than that in the sense that once you click on a ticket and you want to click on that customer, it gives you a lot of detailed information about that customer: address, GPS, phone numbers, email address, special notes. In fact, one that I always like to tell new employees coming in is there is a note in our CRM for a customer that says, if you go on site, don't worry about the turkey, he won't bite you. Which is kind of funny, but they actually told us that, to put a note down that their turkey that runs free on their property, not to be afraid of it. So, we keep detailed notes on all of our customers, but then we keep a running log of tickets, wireless information. So we document what equipment is installed, how it was installed, what speed plan, what their IP addresses are, what their router information is. We even take pictures of our installs, and then we have an ability for our field techs to upload those pictures directly from the field and do the paperwork in the field, and it all uploads to our CRM. So it's really a kind of a universal software suite that manages our entire company. So it's very, very, very valuable to us.
Great.
So
okay,
that's kind of a generalized, I wanted to leave enough time for as many questions as possible, and if there's more discussion about the company, we can. That's my buddy Zeus, by the way. He is a big Great Dane. That's a large t-shirt. So
oh boy.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so that's all I had initially. Like I said, there's plenty of time for me to answer any questions that anybody wants to roll in, and hopefully I can answer them to the best of my ability.
Okay, here's one that came in. Have you connected up any farms, and do they use broadband for more than just entertainment?
Yeah, so we're very rural, and really our bread and butter clients are the farms and the people that can't get anything else out in the country. We actually install TV towers for people that can't get signal way out in the country. So, but most of the time it's entertainment. Every now and then we have some orchards that use it for business, but primarily it's it's for entertainment purposes.
Okay, and do you do any video surveillance?
Yeah, so video is something that's kind of interesting. We've just recently really kind of taken off in the security department. I know that's not something I had on my slides, but I had a local company that I'm very close friends with the owners, and they wanted some security cameras. And so a few years ago, we got a few and very quickly learned some pros and cons to what we were doing. And so now we've evolved, and you fast forward to in the past 12 months, I've had a handful of small town police departments come to me for surveillance options. And so we're starting to get into surveillance quite a bit. Right now, the city that our office is located in, the police department currently streams, I believe it's roughly 15 cameras back to their police department, all across EP&P right now.
Wow.
So.
Okay. Here, this one just came in from Lynn. Are your installers independent contractors, or are they your employees?
So they're all our employees. We've looked into the independent contractor option. We actually used to have a guy that was an independent contractor, but typically we've seen in our analysis of it is that typically contractors work by the job. So you can sometimes lose quality unless you implement quality control features. So if you, like some of the big satellite companies, if you do chargebacks, so for example, you go and you do quality control on their job and you see issues with it and you don't pay them full amount of what you would normally pay them, that's one way to handle that business model. The only issue with that is then you're taking up your valuable time to go back and review their work. So we have all of our employees that are in-house are on our payroll. They're our employees, and we actually take very good care of them. So we provide the van, the tools, the laptop, the cell phone. Just this year, I started buying their boots for them, as well as we already provide the uniforms. So we try to really take care of our employees, because as a WISP, you know, the guys that are out there installing it, they're everything to you. They're the face of your company. You know, the customers may only ever see your installer. You know, they may pay online and never have a problem. And so your installer really means a lot to your company. So we try to take a lot of good care of them to make sure that they're happy. And then in turn, we tend to see quality of work really good because of that.
Is it hard to find, let's say, technically skilled people way out in a rural area?
Yeah, it's actually very difficult, and that's another reason why we try to take care of our guys. Because typically, and what we try to do now when we're hiring new employees, is we look for people that are actually physically capable and trust that we can train that person to be technically capable. So, you know, we really look for guys that aren't afraid of heights. They can climb a tower, they can climb on a roof, they can run cables and be neat and efficient. And then, you know, as long as they've used a computer before, we typically can train them to be an employee. Another thing that helps with that is again, with our CRM. Most of our CRM stuff is automated. So when our employees are in the field, all they have to do is plug in a few settings to the radio, and once the radio communicates back to our CRM, we push all the data to the radio and program it for them. So there's a lot of things that we try to do to help streamline and make the technician's job a lot easier, so that you know, it's easier for us to bring in employees and put them into that position.
Great, and it sounds like you're recruiting a bunch of people from our audience here. They want to know, do you pay them hourly or is it a salary?
So our field techs are hourly, and so they do get time and a half overtime. So they typically start their day at 8 a.m. and they're done by 4:30. And if they work past 4:30 because their job runs long, they get paid time and a half for overtime.
Great. And Omar is asking, what is the best characteristic you could look for when you're hiring an installer?
It's a good question. You know, one thing that we've seen over the years, and I've had a handful of employees go through the company in the 18 years I've been doing this. You know, one thing is just you want good, honest people. You want efficient people. So kind of going back to the thought process of I can train technical, so I don't really necessarily need to look for quality, technically sound people, but I want somebody that's not going to deceive me in the first 90 days on, are they afraid of heights? You know, is their van going to be a complete wreck that's going to take, you know, a lot of man hours to overcome? So when I'm looking for in a new interviewee, I really want them to be able to you know, be honest and be very efficient and timely. And I will say this, that not to sound too biased, but most of my really good employees that have been you know, progressing, and actually most of my employees now are former military. And I think there's something to be said about that, because it kind of gives you the structure necessary to work in this kind of demanding environment, because you're out in the heat, you're out in the cold, you're doing a lot of technical, you know, moving things. And most of my guys that currently work for me and are installers, there's a good handful of them that are military, and I think through osmosis, all of them kind of share those traits that that help kind of drive them, and they're all very hard workers.
Well, and as a former Navy guy, I certainly appreciate your support of veterans.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Rich is asking this question: how many subscribers do you typically connect to one access point?
So another good question. So this is a little bit of a growing pains issue, so it's good to get this one out there for any new WISP that's starting up. When we first deployed PMP 100 series, the FSK 900 and 2.4, we loaded those APs up like you would not believe. In fact, until not too terribly long ago, we had a 900 AP that still had probably about 80 people on it, if you can imagine that. However, now we're a lot more conservative about our AP loads. And also to interject, we used to do omnis, then we learned very quickly you needed to go to 3-sector array, and then we learned very quickly 4 or 6-sector array is the only way to go. So if you're doing new deployments, start out with 4 or 6-sector arrays. Highly recommended. If it's economically feasible for you as a company. But with ePMP, it definitely is always a good option. Now we typically like to keep it around 40 or 50. It really, as we've grown and with some of the technology and its capabilities, you're looking more at frame utilization and overall bandwidth usage. You know, I can put 10 people on an AP and overload it just the same as I can have 80 people on a 900 AP and not overload it. You know, and that's because when we did 80 people on a 900 AP, you know, some of our fastest speed plans at that time were 768K. So it really kind of, as far as what that number is to you as a business, it really has to have a lot of variables taken into account, such as what your speed plans are, what the technology is, what your channel sizes are, frame utilization. A lot of different things come into that factor. But for us, 20 megahertz channels is typically our average. We try to keep it around 40 or 50, or at least make sure our frame utilization isn't starting to max out.
Great. And Omar is asking this question. How do you determine when to expand your network and deploy a new coverage area?
Yeah, so typically for us, it's been organic. So a lot of times it's just been a really fruitful environment for our business in Central Illinois. And what I mean by that is a lot of times for us, it's a small town coming to us and saying, hey, you know, we don't have anything in our town. We've heard that you're great from our neighbors in this town, and we really want you to put something up on our water tank and get us service. So a lot of times for us, that's what happens. But you can also monitor that internally. So if you get a lot of calls in a certain area and those you send a technician out to do an install, or you pre-qualify, and you have a lot of failures in that area, a lot of high failure rate, then that can kind of gauge your growth as a business. You can kind of determine, well, hey, I've had 20 failed installs in the past 3 months in one area. You know, maybe I need a new tower in that area, and that's 20 new clients. And for us, 20 clients on the tower side pays for itself. So it's worth finding something in that area to deploy. So it's kind of a mix. For us, it's organic. We do have a lot of towns surprisingly come to us and want service, but we also look at our failed markets and try to expand into those markets.
Great. And one question that Omar is asking, have you deployed some PMP 450M Medusa projects?
Yeah, so we have 2 active Medusa sites with 4-sector arrays, and both are doing very well. We're still in the process of migrating clients to those, but from what we've seen initially, the grouping grouping function is working very well, and so far so good on bandwidth and service plans for those customers.
Great. Do you have much storm damage to your network?
This was another topic of growing pains. So when we first started out, we very frequently would replace routers at customers' homes. We would be replacing APs on our towers, and among other devices. But then we started following Motorola standards. So if you do your homework and see the Motorola standards, they're very explicit on their grounding techniques. And so we started doing that as well as following some of the electrical guidelines as well. And ever since we started doing our new method of grounding, which includes All of our tower sites have a grounding ring with ground rods every 8 feet, no more than 16 feet away from each other, all interconnected. And then we CAD weld them. So we actually weld all the copper together and to the tower. And then we tie that ring into a bus bar, a grounding bar, that all of our equipment at the site is attached to. So once we started doing that and grounding all of our equipment properly, our number of replacement items in a year has gone down dramatically. As well as we started grounding every single new customer of ours. We install a 600 SS from Cambium, and we install a ground rod if we don't have access to the home ground, or we tie to the home ground. And ever since we started grounding at every single customer site, the number of routers and radios at the subscriber level has gone down dramatically as far as what we've needed to replace.
Great, thanks. And Matthew is asking, what frequencies do you typically use, and why do you use those frequencies?
The quick and easy answer is all of them. But the long answer is, so primarily our network is, we're a very heavy 3 gigahertz network right now because we were definitely on the front edge of the PMP 320 product when it came out. And so we have it's probably less than 2,000 customers now on 320, but at one point in time it was about 2,500. So a lot of 3 gig, but all of our new stuff that's going up is mainly 5 gig. We still have 2.4 and 900 in the air, but the new stuff is definitely 5 gig. It gives us a little bit more flexibility, and with the 3 gigahertz spectrum currently in the U.S. being very limited, it's definitely, for now at least, the path that we're going in, which is towards 5 gig.
Do you see much out in this rural area? Do you see much interference on the 5 gig frequencies?
5 gig, not so much. Really, it's self-management. So a lot of self-interference is our main concern. We have a lot of 5 gig backhauls that we're trying to upgrade. That's another reason why we're going to be very license backhaul heavy this year, is we're trying to really get rid of a lot of our 5 gig stuff so that we can use it more for multipoint. 5 gig, we don't see a lot of noise, but we do have some neighbor WISPs that so far we've been able to work fairly well with them, and we don't butt heads with too many of them. So if we do see noise, we at least are able to mitigate it fairly quickly. Okay, and one question that we have from Kurt: how do your customers connect to your network? Is it PPP over E, or DHCP, or something else? Yeah, so good question. So from the end user's point, so we DHCP to the actual end user's device. So the router gets a public IP address through DHCP. All the internal network is all static, internal IPs, internalized. So our DHCP server is here locally, and our CRM actually determines the IP addresses. So we have IP pools that we give our CRM for certain tower sites, and then the CRM, once you add a client to that tower site, determines from that pool which IP it's going to get. So it's actually a static dynamic IP. So it's kind of a unique system to where once our CRM picks that IP from the pool, it hands it to that customer, and that customer will only ever have that IP unless we tell it to pick another IP from the pool. So it is DHCP, but it's kind of a statically driven assignment. Okay, and Omar is asking the question, so far we've talked about a lot about rural connectivity. Do you have much experience in urban areas? Yeah, so we touch on a little bit of both. So as you saw on the map, we do have towers in some larger communities, Springfield being one of them, Jacksonville, as well as, in town. Most of our towns, still have buildings and structures. And so, really our best options there are multiple deployments, and the beauty is Cambium Sync. So Cambium, that's really, to backtrack all the way back to the early 2000s, one of the things that really launched our business was the ability for the FSK product to synchronize. That was a game changer, and still to this day is a game changer. So when we have a in-town urban area, if we have a lot of obstructions, both from trees and buildings, then one of the best options is to get more sites. But the more sites you put in the air, the more issues you have with noise. And so the synchronization of those sites is key to having a urban deployment in at least our company's experience.
Okay, and one other question we have is about frequencies again. If you had to pick a batting order of which frequencies you would use just by preference in your experience, what order would they come in?
So good question. So real world scenario, right now 5 gig is at the top of the order, primarily because it's flexibility. So I have a lot of spectrum there to mitigate noise and have multiple deployments and have larger channels, followed by probably 3 gig to 900. If this was a perfect world, then obviously if we could have very large channels on 900 megahertz and no interference from the local utility companies, you know, that would be ideal because the penetration, and then work your way up the frequencies, 2, 4, 3 gig, 5 gig. But unfortunately right now it's the other way around, to where you know, 5 gig, 3 gig are kind of your go-tos, but you know, you do have to overcome some of the you know, tree penetration and things like that that are inherently the major issue with some of those frequencies.
Okay, and one member of our audience is getting very much up to speed on synchronization. He's asking, what equipment do you use for that synchronization? Is it a CMM? Is it packet flux? Is it something else?
We have both. So on some of our network, like the PMP320 network, we primarily have CMM 4s. Most of our newer sites we're putting up is packet flux. I'm currently looking into possibly going to the CMM5 for our Medusa deployments. But it's all, you know, part of your business model, you know, what you can cost efficiently purchase. So for us, packet flux is a good alternative option that does a good job of syncing and is a low cost option. For some projects where the funding is there, we can go up to the CMM, which gives you a lot more reliability, I would say. It's a little bit more robust when it comes to things like lightning storms and things like that. It's going to be a lot more durable in that sense. But both are good products, and we use both.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Ben. Those are the questions that we have in the queue right now. Just for everybody's information, the presentation has been recorded. We'll be posting this to the community. We'll also be posting Ben's slides. And if you do have any questions or comments after this, you can post those to the community and we'll get to them. Thanks very much, everyone. And thank you again, Ben. We look forward to seeing you on a future webinar.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.